True love and idolatry. The poetic education. Is there a path leading from idolatry to true love? Renaissance literature is all about this path. From Dante to Shakespeare, the path from idolatry to true love is key to what we read. Let us introduce this problem and consider why this makes no sense at all in a modern context, which is not to say that we cannot appreciate the sense. It's just that we need to step out of the modern context and recognize its limitations, of course, and see that it does make sense. There is such a thing as true love, which is not idolatrous. The problem of idolatry. What are we dealing with in the case of idolatry? One thinks of Christianity immediately when we hear idolatry, or at any rate, the Bible. Let us consider on very pedestrian terms, on a very simple level, what idolatry involves. Idolatry is a kind of love, a love of an object. It is a love that, however, is blind to the background, the source of the object. We see something there, someone objectified at any rate as an object of desire. We love that. We want it. It seems ready at hand. It seems available for grabs. We can conquer. We can purchase it. We can master it. The object of desire, cut off from its reason of being, its background, its source. This is idolatry. The object of idolatry, or the love that is idolatrous, is dead. It is not alive. It may be alive in itself, but it's loved as something dead, cut off from mind, from spirit, from life. The idolatrous is coveting an object, and the love of that object is seeking immediate satisfaction or closure. This is idolatry. To consider the divine, which is by definition transcendent, as something ready at hand, identifying it with a representation, that is idolatry in a religious discourse. That's what we're used to. That's what we're used to hearing. He's an idolatrous because he identifies God with a representation of God. But again, in a more simple context or common context, idolatry involves this reduction of the context or of the background to a determination that can be mastered. We cannot readily master a background, a context. We see an object, but to grasp a background, well, what can that mean? You'd have to reach back to the background, reflectively ask questions, and then you'll find out that you cannot grasp a background, right? A context. You can pretend to grasp an object, and then you realize that it was a mirage. just as in the desert. Once you have it, you no longer enjoy it. You believe or want to believe or believe to believe that you will enjoy it when you grasp it. And then when you have it, it starts fading if it hasn't already faded. This is idolatry. What about true love? Once we consider what true love is, in classical terms, we will be able to think of a path that leads from idolatrous love to true love. True love involves the background, an essential, inalienable link between the object and its background. In poetic terms, how do we reach from one to another? Let us be clear, though, about true love. Who loves? In classical terms, it is the background that loves the object. The background that is the absolute source of the object. And it loves it. Why? Because it reflects the background. It is, we could say, an image of the background. The background is divine, immeasurable. We could even say undefinable, unlimited. You cannot grasp or master it. But it seeks to grasp, in some sense, the object, to bring it back to itself, as a mirror, as an image of itself. The background loves itself in the object. But to speak about background sounds, well, too abstract perhaps, too impersonal. Doesn't strike us as particularly significant. However, if we were to say that the background is a person, and let us call that person the source, the Father, and the object is the Son. Now there is love that goes on between Father and Son. The Father loves the Son because the Son is an image or reflection, the presence itself of the Father. So the Father loves the Son and brings him back into himself. The background, what is hidden about the divine. What is manifest about the divine is the Son. What is hidden about the divine is the background. Divine and so irreducible to an object of coveting, it cannot be reduced to anything other than the background. And again, the background gives it outward, as it were. So it does not try to destroy the object, it generates that object eternally in its essence. True love is divine love. What about, then, the path that leads to idolatrous love, which is foolish love, really? It is love blind to the background, love that mistakes the object for something cut off from the background, from its source, from a reason, from a mind. A path that leads from that to divine love. Divine love, properly understood. And there is such a path, and it involves the education of desire, we could say, the transformation, even the metamorphosis of the lover. And in Renaissance literature, we find this this as a journey of the lover. So we have an adventure. The lover undergoes challenges in order to reach his beloved, the muse, the object of desire. This muse cannot be reached without purgation. Purgation involves a turning of the senses toward the context, a recognition of the presence of the context in the object, so that we see that gradually, let us say the poet is the one who has to be educated, the human being, human consciousness, is being transformed as it turns back through doubt, questioning, right, back to the source of the object of desire. And there it recognizes the inherence of that context of mind in the object. The object is not merely out for grabs. In Descartes' terms, it would just be res extensa, some stuff that is out there. It has no inherent meaning value. Here we have an ascent to an illumination, an awakening, a recognition of the agency of the background in the object. As we turn back, we abstain. There's a delay in satisfaction. We come to recognize the background as something at work in the object. So the object is naturally, or by nature, by its own very nature, pointing us back to its background as what it ultimately is, as the place in which finally we can understand the object. The proper place of the object is in mind, pure and unerring. True love is the love that we ascend to as we recognize, well, what are we in all of this? As we recognize that we are being transformed, that we have been transformed, that the whole point of the object was to carry us back to the context, to the source, to the hiddenness of the divine. The whole point of the appearance of the divine is to carry us back to the hiddenness of the divine. What are we? Shadows, clouds. What are we? We are gifts. We are signs. But not merely signs cut off from that which they signify. They are signs in which the divine is present and reaches back to itself. So if we were to ask, well, what are we ultimately? We would have to find ourselves as lovers in conjunction with or in communion with the context of the ultimate context, the true context of the object of desire, which is the original lover. And so the human lover is ultimately one with the divine lover. And what about the object of love? That object, again, is found as a muse, is the active form, ultimately, that is the divine itself, again, manifesting itself. So, does the poet ever meet his muse? Does he ever commune with his muse? Yes, we could say, in very simple terms, in God. Aside from God, no. Terrible disappointment. But as the lover ascends through reflection, in other words, through this turn of the senses to their source, the lover, the earthly lover, is purged of the earthly element and recognizes himself as lover in God as hidden context. The true lover is that context. And the context there manifests itself in the object, which serves as a vehicle for this lost mind of mine to return to a mind that is eternally awake.